Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the dark ages of Jahiliyyah, when men worshipped stones, idols, and their own desires, and when the heavens seemed silent from revelation for centuries, not all hearts fell into darkness. In the midst of spiritual chaos and the collapse of divine values, there are still souls who refuse to submit to falsehood. They looked not to idols or the dreams of their ancestors, but to the one God who was once known by the prophet Abraham, the father of the prophets. Before the final prophetic message was revealed to Muhammad, there was a small group of people whose hearts remained alive. They were not prophets, nor were they official followers of previous religions, but they recognized the truth with a clear mind and awake nature. They are the hanif people, the guardians of the remaining light of monotheism in the long night. Who are they? What do they believe? And why is their presence an important part of the grand narrative of Islamic history? They are not as widely known as kings, nor are they big figures in history books full of names of conquerors. However, they keep something more valuable than power: the sincerity to seek the truth amidst the confusion of the times. They are not satisfied with the legacy of beliefs passed down from generation to generation without any basis. They refuse to worship what did not create, refuse to bow down to an image made with human hands. In this spiritual restlessness, they take a lonely path, alone, contemplating, and sometimes traveling long distances to find a straight religion. They heard the echo of monotheism in their own hearts, long before the revelation returned to earth. Islam calls them hanif, namely people who turn away from shirk and lean wholeheartedly towards monotheism, following in the footsteps of the prophet Abraham. They are not followers of the Jewish religion, nor are they Christians, but they still believe in the one God and live in submission to him as far as they know. Who are these? What shaped their spiritual path? And how did their role become a kind of bridge between the teachings of Prophet Abraham and the message of Prophet Muhammad? Let us trace the footsteps of the Hanif people, the keepers of the small flame of monotheism before the coming of the perfect light of Islam. In the pages of human history before the apostleship of Muhammad, there is one important chapter that often escapes public attention, namely the existence of a handful of people who remain steadfast in their belief in the one God, even though they live in a society filled with polytheism, idolatry, and moral decline. They are what in Islamic terminology are called al-Hunafa, the plural form of Hanif, namely people who remain upright in monotheism, following the Millah of Abraham, the religion of the prophet Abraham. Hanif and Millah Abraham are people who believe in monotheism in the darkness of Jahiliyyah. The word Hanif comes from the Arabic root word hanafa, which means leaning or turning away. In a religious context, this term refers to someone who turns away from polytheism towards monotheism, namely belief in the oneness of Allah without associating anything with him. A Hanif not only rejects idol worship, but also avoids all forms of subtle and obvious polytheism. Meanwhile, Millah Abraham means way of life, or religion of the prophet Abraham. This path is not just a belief system, but includes a view of life, morality, and a sincere relationship between humans and their God. The prophet Abraham is a major figure in the history of monotheism, who opposed his people, destroyed idols, and was ready to be sacrificed in order to carry out the command of his God. Allah says in the Quran, "Indeed, Abraham was a priest who could be used as an example, obedient to Allah and Hanif, and he was never one of the polytheists." In the pre-Islamic period, Arab society lived in a gloomy spiritual condition. The Quraysh and other tribes in the Hijaz and surrounding areas worshipped hundreds of idols. Around the Kaaba, which was previously built by Ibrahim and Ismail as a place of monotheistic worship, more than 360 idols have been erected. Shamanic practices, superstition, adultery, oppression, and social inequality are part of everyday life. In the midst of this chaos, there is a small group of humans who feel restless. They feel empty with meaningless, empty rituals, and their inner self leads to a purer spiritual search. They found no answers in idols or ancestral myths, so they began to search, not at the ceiling of the temple, but at the night sky and their senses. Characteristics of Hanif are people who have tawheed, common sense, and sincerity. Hanif people are not prophets or apostles. They do not receive revelation. They are also not included in the distorted heavenly religions, such as Judaism and Christianity, which have been mixed with elements of heresy and foreign philosophy. However, they still believe in the one God, love noble values, reject idols, and maintain a pure life. Their faith does not come from books or formal Sharia, but from fitra, the innate tendency in humans to know and worship Allah. Islam views that every human being is born in a state of fitra. In the hadith of the Prophet, it is stated, every child is born in a state of fitra. Then his parents make him a Jew, Christian, or Zoroastrian. Hanif people are those who maintain that fitra amidst the great current of misguidance. They become lamps in the darkness, proof that the truth can be maintained even though there is no direct guiding revelation. Hanif figures in Arab history. Several names appear in Arabic history as representations of the Hanif people, among others. Zayd bin Amr bin Nufail, he is the most prominent figure in the Hanif category. He refused to worship idols, refused to eat meat sacrificed for idols, and even forbade female infanticide, a cruel practice that was common at the time. Zayd traveled to Syria to seek a straight religion and refused to convert to Judaism or Christianity because he considered both of them to be deviant. The Prophet mentioned it in his words, Zayd will be resurrected as one people, a wonderful tribute to the sincere search for truth. Qus bin Sa'ida al-Iyadi, a legendary orator from Najran, who was mentioned by the Prophet himself. He was known for his stirring sermons, calling on the one God and warning about the resurrection and the afterlife. One of his famous sermons reads, "O people, listen. Whoever lives will die, whoever dies will perish, and everything that happens will definitely be taken into account." Waraqah bin Nawfal, cousin of Khadija bint Khuwailid, wife of the Prophet Muhammad. Waraqah adheres to Christian teachings that are close to the teachings of monotheism. He studied the Bible and recognized the signs of Muhammad's prophethood when the first revelation came down. Waraqah said to the Prophet, "You are the prophet of this people, and if I had been alive when your people expelled you, I would have defended you." Hanif as a path to Islam. Islam does not exist as a completely new teaching, but rather as a refinement and return of the teaching of monotheism to its original form. The religion brought by the Prophet Muhammad is a continuation of Millah Abraham, a straight religion of monotheism, but has been distorted by humans over time. The Hanifs are the bridge between the teachings of Abraham's monotheism and the prophethood of Muhammad. They are the stars that continue to shine in the night sky of history, signaling that the real truth can be found by those who seek it with a sincere heart, a clear mind, and a clean soul. Today, when the world is once again faced with various forms of modern shirk, whether in the form of worship of material things, humans, ideologies, or lusts, the spirit of Hanif remains relevant. Being Hanif means continuing to seek the truth, rejecting deviations even though they are common in society, and living in true monotheism. The Hanifs before Islam were examples that truth does not have to wait for the time of revelation. It can be found by those who maintain their natural disposition and free themselves from the shackles of misleading traditions. So in every era, there will always be new Hanifs, those who secretly guard the light in their hearts, waiting for the time to be illuminated by revelation or fighting for monotheism in silence. The Hanif people before the Prophet Muhammad was sent are real proof that the truth is never lost, even though the world is covered in darkness and error. They are the chosen figures who maintain the human nature to know the one God, even without direct revelation, without prophets and messengers as guides. With common sense, sincere hearts, and the courage to reject deviant social norms, they continue to walk the straight path of monotheism. Their existence reminds us that Islam is not a new religion that suddenly appeared, but rather a perfection and return to the pure path of the Prophet Abraham. The Hanif path is a spiritual bridge that connects the primordial truth inherited by the previous prophets with the final message brought by the Prophet Muhammad. Thus, Islam perfects what has been damaged and eliminates the deviations that have damaged previous religions. More than that, the stories of the Hanif people teach us about the importance of preserving and maintaining the natural monotheism within each of us. They are examples of how a human being must dare to stand firm in the truth, even when faced with social pressure, ignorance, and even threats. They show that an honest and sincere spiritual search will always find its way, even in the most difficult conditions. In modern life, when the temptations and challenges to deviate from the path of monotheism are increasingly numerous and diverse, the spirit of hanif must remain alive. We are invited to turn away from all forms of contemporary polytheism, whether in the form of materialism, blind fanaticism, or worship of something other than Allah, and return to our pure natural nature, to the straight and pure religion as taught by Abraham and perfected by the Prophet Muhammad. May the stories and examples of these Hanif people be a reminder to us all that in the midst of the diversity and challenges of the times, the straight path always exists and can be taken with determination and sincerity of intention. Let us make them an inspiration to continue to maintain faith, cleanse our souls from all forms of shirk, and uphold essential monotheism in every step of life. Thus, we are not only heirs to history, but also successors of the eternal light of monotheism, illuminating the world with sincere and conscious faith. In interpreting the journey of the Hanif people, we are also invited to understand that the search for truth is a challenging process and is not always easy. They face social pressure, ostracization, and even loneliness in their beliefs. However, their steadfastness is a reflection of the strength of faith born from a deep awareness of the essence of the one God. We too, in the present day, in various situations and conditions, are faced with various forms of modern polytheism that are not always visible in the form of physical idols, but can be hidden in practices that distance us from true monotheism. Greed, excessive dependence on material things, ideologies that claim absolute truth without a basis in monotheism, or even self-worship, can be subtle but dangerous forms of polytheism. Therefore, emulating the spirit of the Hanif is not only about understanding history, but also about how we live and maintain faith in our daily lives. Being a modern Hanif means daring to turn away from everything that violates the principles of monotheism, rejecting all forms of worship other than to Allah, and keeping the heart clean from the negative influences of the world. The spirit of Hanif is an invitation to always prioritize common sense, pure nature, and moral courage in living life. That way, we can become individuals who are not easily swayed by the currents of confusion of the times, but remain steadfast on the right and straight path. May Allah always guide us to follow in the footsteps of the Hanif people, keep our faith pure, and strengthen our commitment to consistently practicing the teachings of Tawheed. May we be part of a people who not only know the truth, but also dare to defend it and practice it wholeheartedly. Amen. True story, friends. See you in the next video.